Hi, BookTube. Sorry for the kind of long break since the last video. I kind of started this channel intending for it to be like a one video per week at minimum type thing, but for one thing, I have been preoccupied with reading, which is a good thing. In particular, reading this, which we will be talking about soon enough, and also I'm going through one of my semi-regular TV phases. I'm not much of a TV watcher. I much prefer movies because movies, they end at some point, and TV just never seems to end and always goes on just a little bit too long for my taste. But the Emmys are coming up, and that always kind of motivates me to watch at least a little bit so that I have some investment while I'm watching the award show. And so I've watched The Penguin and Adolescence lately and liked them both pretty well. But that has taken my attention away from both reading and from making videos, and so I'm going to have to try to find a balance. A few videos back I did the 10 untouched books tag, in which I talked about 10 books that I own and have owned for at least a year and have not read. And I took that as an opportunity to reveal to BookTube that I am sort of averse to big books. And that video, I think, has gotten a bigger response than any of my videos so far. It's mainly from people telling me, like, dude, you need to read Lord of the Rings already. So I will, sooner rather than later. And one of those comments came from Emily, from M Reads, a very nice, new BookTube channel, even newer than mine, which, I'll link her channel down below. So she saw my 10 untouched books tag video, and so she knows about my fear of big books, my phobia of mammoths. And what does Emily do? She tags me in the mammoth book tag. If my initial admission of a fear of big books was not enough, I now am forced to reveal, because I'm not just going to not do a book tag. I am now forced to reveal just how few big books I have read. I had to go to Goodreads for this because I could not think of any big books that qualified, really, because the criteria in Emily's video, at least, was that a mammoth is a book that is at least 800 pages. And according to Goodreads, I have read exactly one book that meets this criteria. And what sucks is the one that I've read is not one that I would wholeheartedly recommend, and it's James Jones's From Here to Eternity, which is a book that I think is worth reading. It's one of the, it's a National Book Award winner. It's one of the big World War II novels that came out in the few years, like right after the war, that was written by a veteran, the other ones being the Caine Mutiny, The Young Lions, and then From Here to Eternity, and then a fourth book, which I'll talk about soon. I mean, it has its qualities, but it's pretty baggy. It's pretty, slow moving. I mean, it helps if you go into it with a vested interest in the time period, the location. I mean, because the whole thing takes place on basically an army barracks in Hawaii in the early 1940s, and culminates with the attack on Pearl Harbor and the U.S.'s entry into World War II. It's not really a page turner. It's more like as time goes on, it feels more like a period piece, like it's one of those books that you would go back to read because it is an important book, or at one time it was an important book. I believe it's the first book that I've talked about on this channel that I have read, but I have not seen the movie. Which I should probably get on that, because it's a Best Picture winner and was a favorite of my grandfather, who was a World War II vet himself. But so yeah, that's the one mammoth that I have read. If we can soften the criteria just a little bit, if we can open it up to books that are like 700 pages or more. If you just think of me as like a golfer with a high handicap, then I can talk about 3 more books that are what I would call big books that I do like, or at least kind of stand out to me. And going in order from my least favorite to my favorite, the first of those is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. A book that you kind of have to be careful talking about on BookTube, I feel like, because as soon as you hold this book up or put the picture up next to your face, you kind of run the risk of people pegging you as like, oh, you're like a House of Leaves guy, you're a Mark Danielewski guy, huh? But the truth is, I'm not a House of Leaves fan, nor am I a House of Leaves hater. I've always been very mixed on this book, and that is because I think it is a book with an extraordinary premise, but with unsatisfactory execution. If you're not really aware of this book, it's kind of like a story within a story. The inner story of it is like a scholarly paper or like a master's thesis or something about an actual found footage horror movie. Like this big home video basically of a family who has just moved into this house and quickly realizes that something is not quite right, and then slowly comes to the realization that something is really, really not right. That home is like a portal to hell or whatever. In large part, the book is just quotations from this one scholarly paper that just kind of describes the home video, and the outer story, kind of the framing story, is this guy who finds the scholarly paper and just becomes obsessed with it, and trying to find out more about it, trying to find out more about the author. That premise of like the scariest movie of all time being found and written about by like a professor, so it's in vivid detail, but you can't see it, and you're just picturing it. For a horror fan like myself, that is just catnip. But the execution of it is just like, it's some of the dialogue is just kind of corny. Some of the ways in which Danielewski tries to ground the story in the real world just fall flat or are not very convincing. And the framing story, the portions of the book that are written by Johnny Truant, who is the guy who finds the scholarly paper, are overindulgent. It's probably one of those mammoths that would benefit from not being a mammoth, from being cut down a little bit. And I haven't read it in 10 plus years, but I've always kind of wanted to go back to it. And that's because I don't want to be mixed on it. I want to either reread it and be, totally won over by it, or reread it and then finally conclude that, like, no, this is just a bad book. And so I would include it on this list of 3 because it, while it's not really a favorite, it is one of those books that has stuck with me. And then the second mammoth, the book that I do just plain like, is the other big World War II novel written in the aftermath of the war, and that is Norman Mailer's The Naked and the Dead, his debut novel, what a lot of people consider his best. He was for people who don't know, he was a pretty significant literary figure from about the middle to the end of the 20th century, and wrote novels, wrote journalism, essays, biographies, and could often be great. I think that is evident in books like The Armies of the Night and Miami and the Siege of Chicago. But I think what hurts him is that as a person he was at best obnoxious and at worst nearly murderous. He kind of allowed his own character to overshadow his writing. But if you want to see the book that shot him to the level of fame that he reached, it's right here. And this is a book that I would call, I'm not using this word to put the book down. It's kind of a standard war novel, in that I feel like this kind of set the standard for a lot of war novels going forward. It's it's long, but it's pretty fast paced, and it's heavy not just on action, but on kind of putting you in the heads of many different characters within the book. And it's also just a really kind of revealing novel about soldiers versus officers, how the soldiers view the officers and vice versa. And I'm sure it would probably sting Mailer to hear this because it was his debut, but it's probably the book of his that will last the longest. And my third Mammoth, which is a book that I love, comes in at 717 pages, and a lot of those pages are notes and index, but I mean, look, I've got to be pretty lenient when it comes to the criteria here. It's still a really big book, and that is evident by the title, I think. This is Dave Marsh's The Heart and Soul of Rock and Roll, the 1001 Greatest Singles Ever Made. And from that subtitle, you might assume that, okay, well, this is going to be a book of 1001 songs, and on each page there's going to be 2 entries, and they're going to have like a little capsule review from Marsh, and it's going to be the same sort of template for each one. And the really cool thing is that is not what this book is like at all. It is a list of the 1001 greatest singles according to Marsh, who is kind of biased toward rock and roll and blues, R&B, soul, doo-wop, that kind of stuff, which I am as well. It starts with the song that he puts at number 1, which is Marvin Gaye's I Heard It Through the Grapevine. Not a bad pick. I think I would, if we're just talking Marvin Gaye, I would put What's Going On over that song, and I would put Let's Get It On over What's Going On, but that's just me. But like for that song, he writes a pretty lengthy description of the song, the impact that it had, what sets it apart. But then in the entries after that, for some entries, Marsh will give you just like a detailed breakdown of what the song is, how it sounds, why it's so special. And then for some entries, you might just get like a personal anecdote from Marsh about like the first time that he heard this song. For artists who have multiple entries in this book, like Chuck Berry or Little Richard or whatever, he weaves in bits of biography about the artist, and so it makes the book a lot more readable and a lot more compulsively readable, I guess, than you would think it would be. It seems like it's just a reference book, but it's, I think, just a great cover-to-cover read, and also just you will find a lot of new favorite music from this, or you'll be motivated to go back and listen to songs that maybe you've heard before, but you kind of take for granted. If you haven't heard the Beach Boys in a while, you've probably forgotten how good the Beach Boys are, and this will motivate you to go back to them. And then at the end of Emily's video, she listed 3 mammoths that she has not read, so I guess I might as well list 3 more. I don't have them on hand, but some other big books that I haven't read. Well, she listed Anna Karenina as one of her favorites. I haven't read that. Nor have I read War and Peace. Nor have I read The Brothers Karamazov. And I'll just stop there. And just go ahead and end the video and get back to reading. So, thank you for watching, and thank you, Emily, for the tag.